everybody, this is Praxis. Isn't that a much more pleasant opening? I just find it so delightful. It's a long loop. There's a lot of stuff in there. You know, next time it comes up, I'll try to like make it so other things are playing. But I don't know. I have a fun time looking back at all that old stuff, and no one enjoys my jokes more than I do because I made them for myself. So welcome to the live stream. This live stream is about homestead building, retreat building, specifically what's going on in the Project Homestead series. But if you have any questions, that are even off topic to that, please feel free to shoot them over. And I'm going to prioritize all of the homestead building and those kinds of questions. But if we have time, I'll answer all sorts of things. Got a kind of an interesting show for you tonight. And in addition to the fact that there's a much better pre-show opener, which might actually be better than the show itself. But in addition to that fact, there's all sorts of things going on. There's an activity that I'm going to share with you in a moment. Also have some video footage of what was going on today. If you guys are familiar with the series, many of you know that what you're seeing in the series unfolding is about a month or so behind where things are actually, and that had to do with the fact that I had to start kind of shooting episodes before I was able to start the show because I'm not going to explain all the nuts and bolts of it, but anyway, we're like a month off. I'm trying to kind of slowly catch us up, as much as I can, but there's about a month difference. So I'm going to show you what's going on today. It has to do with the fallout shelter, root cellar thing and everything. I literally shoveled 1 ton of gravel today. It was great, and I did it like before lunch. And
in Minecraft.
What's up?
In Minecraft. You did it in Minecraft.
No, in real life. So I'm going to share that with you guys, and I have a war injury from it. Not to demean actual war injuries, but I have evidence of having done work today, and I wanted to share with you a way of kind of treating this sort of injury or evidence. And it's the most awkward spot on my whole body. It's not my crotch. It's the back of my leg. I rehearsed this earlier, so you can actually see it. Wait. Do you got it? Oh God!
Oh, so you're hurting yourself. Stop it.
Didn't we just have a yoga video right before this thing played? Okay. So right here, all this black stuff there, that is asphalt tar. I'm sorry, did I actually flash the moment I did that?
What?
I'm going to get demonetized. So that's asphalt tar from the work that I was doing today. And I wanted to share with you a way of getting rid of it using petroleum jelly. This is just Vaseline. I actually have a store of it specifically. I don't know why people use Vaseline. I guess I've heard that like models use it for putting on their teeth for when they're like smiling at, I don't know, beauty shows or whatever they do. But it's petroleum jelly is like what it is, and I don't know why people put it on their skin as like a health thing. It's petroleum, and that's why I'm using it today, is because petroleum jelly, Vaseline, is a great way of dissolving away asphalt tar if you get it on yourself. So got a little on my fingers, and I'm not going to throw my leg up again, but just kind of annotate what I'm doing. I'm just kind of rubbing it in. I'm just going to cover the whole area, and then at the end of the show, we'll go and we'll check what it's turned into. And right now I'm realizing that one of the other things I wanted to make sure I had available to myself was a paper towel, and I forgot to grab that.
I can grab that.
Oh, okay. There we go. So that'll be used a little bit later. So I'm just kind of covering the whole area up. And it does, I've done it several times in the past week. It just kind of dissolves the asphalt tar away and just gets rid of it. So, give me the paper towels. Okay, we'll use those later on. All right, so we got that going on later on in the show, but first I wanted to show you what I've been doing today. We've got some B-roll. This is a new feature for the live stream, some B-roll that I shot earlier today, and Amber is ready to kind of cue it up and show it to you.
Right here?
I don't know what you're pointing at because I'm looking at the camera. Alright, so this is where I was working this morning. I was doing a little bit of concrete work, stucco on the side of the walls. I've got it covered in plastic now to keep it moist, because you want to keep concrete moist while it cures. I don't want it drying out in the sun. There's all my tools. I've been doing everything with these 5-gallon buckets or tubs, jugs, whatever, of water. They're just part of my general preps, and they've come in really handy for this. It takes about 5 gallons to do one 80-pound bag of mason mix. And this is the second thing that I did. Just this morning, we got delivered one giant pile of gravel. It was 1 ton of gravel. And the purpose of that was to do the perimeter drain around the root cellar / fallout shelter. And I'll just give you a look at that down there. You can see we've got this sort of pile of dirt and gravel, and it's over this sheet here, and underneath that is all this clean gravel, and underneath that is the perimeter drain. So I had to shovel it all and carry it in buckets to cover up the entire perimeter drain. And here's the entrance right over there. You can pop inside quickly. We'll see how much light's in there. I have not installed the light tubes yet. Let's see if there's much visible in here. Yeah, there we go. So the light tubes are going to be coming in through these holes here, and once those are installed, there'll be more light in here. We'll also have electric lights. We're going to be painting the walls white. There's some of the paint back there, some other supplies, and this is the interior space. So it's a big project, but I think worthwhile. It'll be very useful for, root cellar kind of stuff, storing food. And if there was ever some kind of a emergency where you needed a fallout shelter, I don't think you could pay too much for something like this, because it'd be a lifesaver in that situation. But even if that never happens, I think it'll be a really useful root cellar. Alright, so that was what I was kind of working on today. I essentially had to shovel all the gravel down into that trench. I think it took about 3 hours or so to shovel about a ton of gravel down there. So I didn't really know how long that was going to take, so it ended up being about 3 hours there. And it actually went a lot easier than I thought it was going to. I think every bucket that I carried was probably about 50 pounds, so maybe I did like 40 buckets or so, I'm gonna guess, something along those lines. But yeah, that was a lot to carry. There's been a question. It was about the center beam in the house and whether or not. Well, the center beam in our house is made up out of pressure treated timber, and the question was whether that's common, whether because oftentimes you do that with steel, like a steel I-beam or something like that. And I've seen both ways done. I think that in the case of what we're building here, it was done with wood because the intent of the kit and the company that I'm working with is to make these kits so that people can, with a minimal amount of extra help from cranes and things like that a family could build this house on their own. So it's sort of designed around the idea that you have like two adults, pretty much two adults, can do it. And if you had like a steel crane that would a crane that would have to come in for a steel beam, that would be like an additional kind of outside involvement that they're trying to get away from. Obviously for this project I've had concrete poured and that was done from a company, but you could also have done the foundation with concrete block, which is certainly something that two people could do or one person could do. So so it's done in both ways. I know our neighbor in the house that we're temporarily staying in, I was over in their basement the other day without permission, just sneaking around. And they actually had a steel beam that was not really high enough for you not to hit your head on. It was really sort of low, but very strong. So yeah, that's definitely something that gets used. But for this, because they wanted to make it so that just people could do it themselves, they did it with just the pressure treated lumber. Do we have any other specific questions or anything like that? Because
not at the moment.
Okay, well, I'll catch you guys up on my recycled tea bags. I'll catch you guys up on what's been going on, because there have been a few little snarls that have come up in the past couple days, and these are things that it's important to share with you. That's why I'm doing this series, so you guys can see the kind of things that might come up for you if you ever do this yourself, and I think it's always helpful that if you know that someone else has gone through it and you know that they've had these kinds of issues, when those kind of issues happen to you, it doesn't feel like it's like, oh, why is everything going wrong for me? Don't worry, everything goes wrong for everybody. And here's a couple of things that have been kind of being a little bit of a problem lately for us. And they all relate to contractors, not surprisingly. Well, first off, we finally got our contractor kind of coming back on site, the one that's been doing the earth moving and everything. I've just been riding them, not sexually, just, verbally and through text, trying to get them back on site. There's plenty for them to do. There has been plenty for them to do. Wanted to start excavating for the leach field, which is a part of the septic system. We wanted to, be digging some trenches and things. There's been a lot that's been waiting to be done, and they haven't been on site for a month. And we finally got them back. Yesterday they delivered an excavator, and that was it. That's all they did. And then this morning they delivered some gravel, which I was able to use myself. But I've really been after them, and it's just been really hard getting them back because we're getting it doesn't feel like we're getting close to winter here in the Northern Hemisphere because it's still August, but we're almost at the end of August, and then there's September, and then there's October, and then November. You're learning all sorts of things, the order of the months. It doesn't take that much time for time to build up. Like when I first started getting really aggressive with telling them there's kind of things are starting to be held up by you guys because you're not here. That was 2 weeks ago, and they said, yep, we'll be there at the beginning of the week. And then the whole week went by and they didn't show up. And then they said they're going to be there at the beginning of this week. And by Wednesday, I'm on them again. It's you guys didn't hit the beginning of the week. When do you think about showing up? And really been on them, and they're finally kind of starting to come back. And in fact, they have machines on site. It's a good sign because they wouldn't be putting the machines there if they didn't plan on using them. So that's been something I've been really dealing with the past month or so, and in particular the past 2 weeks with empty promises of them saying that they're going to arrive and not arriving. In the second issue, and this is kind of a big one, that's also related to this contractor, is that I got a message from the Board of Health in the town. We got a question?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to pick up that train of thought in a moment. I'll answer the question first. What's up?
So when you're heating with the stove, how are you transporting the heat from the stove? Just the stovepipe?
Okay, good question. I've been heating with a wood stove since 2004. I started doing that because prior to building my own place, which you guys might have been familiar with, the last place we were at, prior to building that, I lived in a trailer for, 3 or 4 years. I think it was 3 or 4 years. And what's important about that is that we lived in it for 3 or 4 winters because, summers are just fine living in a trailer, but it's the winters that are really challenging. And what I learned from that is I really wanted to have a way of heating the house that didn't have moving parts. Our heater in the trailer, it had a blower, and it broke in the middle of February, and it was just horrible. So when I built our house, I wanted to have really simple heating system. Put wood in, light match, burns. I know it's a little more complicated than that, kindling and all that. But I want to have something super simple that didn't have a bunch of moving parts that couldn't break. So I've been doing wood burning for the past 15 years. I feel like I have a decent amount of experience with it, and I absolutely love it. It's just the greatest way of warming up in the winter when you come in and you're just really cold. You go into your average house that has forced hot air or something like that, and the temperature most people have their house at is maybe 72 or something like that. And it's, if your body and your core are really cold, it's just that oftentimes just isn't really warm enough to feel oh, this is great, it's so toasty warm in here and I just feel awesome. But if you have a wood stove and you're heating with a wood stove in your house and you are freaking freezing and you come in and you stand in front of the wood stove, it's just, you can just soak up all that heat so quickly. It's the most wonderful thing in the world. Also, the fuel for it is renewable. It's called trees, and the emissions go up out of the chimney, and then they get grabbed by more trees, and they they regrow. Granted, I wouldn't want to have my face in the top of the chimney. That's what Mother Nature's for, is that closing the loop on that. But I think it's a wonderful way of heating, and I have a lot of experience with it. And most of the heat that is coming out of it is coming out of the stove itself for most people, because a lot of times when you are venting these out of houses, they're running through what's called metal vestas or insulated chimney pipe. And you can kind of tell the difference when you're in someone's house, and there's two different types of pipe. There's like black pipe, and then there's this metal vestas stuff. There might be other types too, but those are the two that I'm familiar with. And the metal vestas pipe looks like super shiny. It's like mirror surface to it. And the black pipe, as you would expect, is black. It's like a matte black, not shiny at all. Well, sometimes shiny when it's like new, but like after it gets used for a while, like it becomes just kind of like a matte, dull kind of black color. And the insulated pipe, as you would expect, is insulated, so it's keeping the heat inside, and a lot of that heat's not escaping through the side of the pipe. The black pipe, on the other hand, does get really hot. Like if you look along the side of it, like you ever look like down a hot highway or something like that, you see like little mirages dancing over the surface from the bending of the light with the different temperature air. You can see that around the black pipe on a wood stove when you have it going, nice and hot. And you definitely transfer a lot out of the black pipe. Now you might be wondering that, well, why wouldn't you always have black pipe? Because you're getting all the heat out of it. And there's two reasons for that. One is that whenever you pass through a ceiling or something like that, it has to be inside something that's insulated, because otherwise you could start a fire. And the other reason is that once the chimney gases start getting cool by transferring their heat out through the black pipe, if they get too cool, they start really leaving a lot of what's called creosote, which is like a somewhat dangerous buildup on the inside of a chimney, which can later on catch fire and create a really dangerous chimney fire. So depending on your setup, you are going to be getting more heat from your pipes or less heat from your pipes, depending on which pipes you have and how much of them they have. Usually it's kind of a mix of the two of them, but you're always getting a ton of heat right off the wood stove. We had another question?
Would you use coal or anthracite, which is a hot or smokeless coal?
Oh, okay. I don't have very much experience with coal, so I don't want to talk to it directly. My sense of it is that I would tend to want to stay away from it, just because like the coal dust, that I've seen around different people's houses, it is a thing. It does get on things. There used to be London, and like there's like bad stories about like all the coal, but like most of what I know about coal and coal heating is kind of it's secondhand information, and that kind of prompts me to not really want to investigate down that avenue. But again, it's like I just don't know enough about it to comment on it intelligently. Which, like, how is this video even on YouTube? Like, who on YouTube says that? I don't know enough about this to really have an opinion on it. But I have known people that have used it. It's interesting when you see fires coming out of people's houses, the smoke, hopefully not the fire. When you see the smoke coming out, when the smoke has kind of a bluish cast, I guess that's indicative of it being a wood fire. And I certainly see a bluish cast of smoke coming out of our place when I've been burning. But I've been told, and I've seen this on a couple of occasions.
Just came in.
Oh, wow.
Manifestation of Imagination,
Nice.
Hooples, and a bunch of other people.
Well, welcome everybody. When coal's being burned, it's my understanding, and I have seen this on a couple of occasions, that it's oftentimes kind of a yellowish cast. So if you want to drive down the street and see who's burning what, that's one way that I've heard of doing it, and I have seen some different colored smoke coming out of people's houses, so it seems like the case. Do you have any other questions, or should I jump back to what I was talking about before? Okay.
Would you use the wood ash for your garden?
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's another great thing about wood stoves and everything. When you are heating with anything else like uranium rods or whatever, I think there's some other ways of heating people's houses, but let's just go with uranium fuel rods. Once they're spent, you don't want to necessarily use those as compost or fertilizer or whatever. Maybe it's a weapon. But they're not really useful for very much, but the wood ash is very useful. Now, you don't want to compost it. It can inhibit the composting process, so you don't want to be taking your ashes and things like that and dumping them right into your compost bin. Have them skip right by the compost bin and go directly into your garden. And if you guys know fertilizers, they have like that, what's it, like NPTK or whatever. It's like they stand for different, N is nitrogen, P is something else, potassium. whatever, phosphorus. Anyway, potash, whatever, is what you're getting a lot of out of the ash itself. Like, maybe they're the same thing, but whenever like you're getting a fertilizer that has potash or whatever in it, it is very much akin, or maybe exactly the same thing as the ash. So yeah, it's really helpful and useful to put in there. I mean, I don't think I'd want to grow plants directly out of ash alone, because they probably need other things as well. It probably would not be a balanced diet for them. But yeah, I always put that stuff in the garden. I'll put it on the lawn. I'll always collect it in a big bucket. I used to do it in the greenhouse, where I'd dump it in, and then I would just take that and I'd kind of like spread it out over the snow in the winter time. And the great thing about that is it, like, if you want to help global warming and everything, you know, just make the planet hotter, turn it into an oven. We all know that having like darker surfaces can help to attract sunlight, retain sunlight, absorb the heat from the sunlight. In fact, that's one of the ways that a lot of the extra melting in snowy areas is oftentimes happening when there is a lot of dust storms in one area. The dust can blow onto snowy areas, it darkens them a little bit, and then, you know, they cumulatively absorb more sunlight. Well, you can do the same thing in your yard, and it can help to like really melt snow a little bit faster, which is kind of a great, you know, you feel so inept, useless, helpless when it comes to like pushing the seasons forward. You really just have to wait for the time to go by. But that's one thing where you can do, and like if you spread the ash around the snow in your yard, it, like, the snow in your yard is going to melt a lot faster. And I've seen it happens all the time because science. And I always just like love that when I'm just like spreading it around. It's like, melt, go away. We don't want you anymore. We want spring. More questions?
Hoople says too much ash is bad. It messed up their Swiss chard for 3 years.
Wow, okay. Well, I'd be interested to know what too much is. I've never had an issue where putting it in seemed to diminish the performance of my garden in any way, and I've read on a number of occasions that it can be helpful. I'd be interested in Hooples if you could tell me what too much was for you, if you have some way of describing that, because obviously, like I alluded, that, you know, I wouldn't want to grow something in pure ash, but I don't honestly know where that line is. So maybe you know at least what's on the wrong side of the line, if you have some experience with that. All right, do we have any other questions, or should I continue my? What the hell was I talking about at this point?
I don't know.
It was the second awful thing going on with the contractors. No other questions at the moment?
Not at the moment.
Okay. And we got like 5 minutes left. So if you have any questions or comments or super chats, we still have the super chat shirt on. Super chats are a way of helping the channel by doing some kind of thing called super chat. And if you do, your name gets written on here. There's also these new things called, I don't know what the hell they're called. They're like super stickers or something like that. I've honestly never seen one go on. It's supposed to do some like, I don't know, it's supposed to be fun, but it's a way of helping the channel and everything. So anyway, what I was talking about in regard to the second issue that's been going on this week is I was contacted by the Board of Health, and they've been very friendly, very personable. We get a question?
We get 2 questions. Okay.
Maybe we'll never get to it. The second awful thing. What's the question? We also have to reveal what happened with the leg. It's starting to burn and sting.
Is it?
Not really, I'm just kidding. No. Okay, question. We only got like 6 minutes.
Would you only burn hardwood, or would softwoods work too?
That's a great question. I burn anything that burns generally. Although that said, there are lots of different types of wood that you might want to stay away from for different reasons. It tends to be best to burn it when it's drier. If you burn it drier, it can burn hotter, it can burn cleaner. Instead of taking the heat energy to boil off all the water that's still in your wood, the heat energy can just be released out into your home. So drier woods tend to be good, but there are some woods that aren't so great. White pine, for example, is something that grows around here a lot. In fact, we have a gigantic pile of white pine that was felled for putting in the new homestead. But white pine, it's a great wood for burning outside, but it has a lot of pitch in it, and it'll put a lot of creosote into your chimney. Not all pine trees are like that. The hemlock, for example, which is a tree that we have a lot of around here, hemlocks are totally fine for burning, and I burn hemlock all the time. The hardwoods, I don't know if this is always the case, but this is like just kind of a rule of thumb. The hardwoods tend to have more heat energy in them, and they burn a little bit slower. and the softer woods, the pines and things like that, they tend to have a little less heat energy, and they just burn through faster. If I put a bunch of hemlock into my wood stove, it just seems like it just chugs through it faster because there's like less mass to it, and there's just less heat energy in there. But I'll burn really anything that's convenient, and my favorite stuff to burn is stuff that already fell down and is in my way and I want to get rid of it. And it's like, if I can marry, like, I've got a mess to clean up and I want to heat my house, and those two things can be solved by the same process, then I'm happy with that. So yeah, so hardwood, softwoods, I'll burn whatever, but there are some woods that you want to stay away from, and I'm sure you could do an easy web search to find out which trees in your area maybe aren't so good to burn, because you don't want to put a lot of pitch and creosote into your chimney, because again, you can have a chimney fire. What was the second question?
What wood are you using for the house frame, and are you having hurricane struts fitted for the roof?
We are using, it's all pine-based wood for the house frame, and we're not specifically doing any commercially bought hurricane struts or anything like that, but I am putting extra reinforcement into the wall to give it more shear strength. The way that this house is built is it has a lot more structural strength than a lot of conventionally built homes, because you have so many layers, like the tongue and groove boards that are going up. They all interlock with each other. Even the foam sheeting that goes over, the way that it gets compressed onto the house. If you think about like a piece of styrofoam, it's like you can bend it and you can break it, but if you have like a big sheet, you can't I need like a visual aid. Give me a visual aid. What do I got? Okay. Well, let's just pretend that this is a sheet of styrofoam. You can bend it and it'll snap. You can do that kind of thing. But you can't. I'm going to have my top hand want to go this way and my bottom hand want to go that way. You can't do that too much to it. And there's a lot of sheets like that are applied right to the face of the house. And all of that stuff, it's just layer after layer of structural strength. And in addition to that, I'm going to be putting some metal beams at angles that are just sort of hidden in there to give it some added strength. So we're not going with anything like specific, like this is a hurricane strut and we bought it and it's like warranted for this, that, and the other thing. But we are putting lots of elements into the structure that have that in mind, that are trying to give the house as much kind of structural strength in that regard, especially with having so many windows in the front. The windows are kind of a weak point in the house, so we're really trying to build all the rest around it to be nice and strong, and including the interior walls and things. Having interior walls at the proper angles really helps to add stability to the whole thing. And I could really feel it when I was doing the decking on the top. I'm not sure where we are in the series at the moment, but I've started putting decking on the floor joists. And when we had just had a couple of diagonal boards on the posts, you could still feel some jiggle to the floor. And I was like, I just don't like working up here with a little jiggle to the floor. So I actually did one layer of sheathing, the interior wall sheathing, that tongue and groove board on the front, and even with all the windows not even being covered up, you could really feel that the floor locked down just having those on there. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing. Do you have any more questions, or do I have 1 minute to finish my story?
You have 2 minutes and no questions at the moment.
Awesome. Okay. Well, not awesome. I feel abandoned, but we'll deal with it and we'll recover. Okay.
Actually, we did just get a question.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Great.
Hurricane struts for the metal roof is not very costly, which is why I wondered. Maybe it wasn't a question.
It's more of a comment than a question.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not really an expense thing. It's just, I buy so much commercial stuff that's intended for something, and it's just like, the stuff I just invent out of junk usually works better a lot of the time. That's just sort of my approach. But the idea of doing extra reinforcements, why not? Like, build beyond the code, because the codes are built for the problems of yesterday, not the problems of tomorrow. And a problem of right now from today was this goo on. Oh, that's horrible. It's like in the shadow. Okay.
Turn a little bit.
Okay, does that help? Okay. So you can see it here, and I'm just going to take this paper towel and just start wiping, and you see it just dissolves right off. And that had been like dried on there. As soon as I got it, I just put a bunch of sand on it just so it wasn't sticky anymore. And it looks like I need another treatment, but you can see it's greatly diminished Yeah, it's just a little bit still stuck in the hairs there. So anyway, you don't have to watch.
See it on the camera.
Couldn't you see it? It worked great though. Well, anyway, I mean, the evidence is right there. That used to be on my leg, and now it's not anymore. So yeah, if you ever get asphalt tar or anything on you, just a little petroleum jelly, and you know, it'll come right off. Especially if you let it sit there for a while, it just kind of dissolves it. So it looks like that's it. That's the show. Thank you, everyone, so much for showing up and all the great questions. I really appreciate it. It's always a bit more fun. Actually, it's like not fun at all when nobody asks any questions. So I appreciate that, and I will be seeing you guys next month. Again, it's the first Friday of the month is the Patreon-only live stream, and the third Friday, which is this one right now, is the one that's open to everybody. So thank you very much. Have a nice night, and thanks for watching. Please subscribe and tune in every Friday at 4:30 New York time for a new video. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can do so both through Patreon or PayPal.